We wish you were never born. And I just smiled as I stood up. When my mother told me they wished I was never born, I smiled. Not because it didn't hurt, but because something inside me had finally stopped trying to prove I deserved to exist. Welcome to the Last Lesson channel. I'm so glad you're here. If this is your first time, please subscribe. I share real stories about healing, growth, and finding yourself every single week. I need you to understand something before I tell you this story. I wasn't always the person I am now. 2 years ago, I was someone else entirely. Someone smaller. Someone who believed that love was something you earned through sacrifice, through silence, through making yourself as small and useful as possible. I was 21 years old, and I had spent my entire life trying to be enough for people who had already decided I wasn't. Let me take you back. I grew up in a house that always felt just a little too small for the four of us. My parents, my older brother Marcus, my younger sister Lily, and me, the middle child, the one nobody writes songs about, the one who learns early that the squeaky wheel gets the grease, so you'd better stay quiet if you don't want to be a burden. Marcus was 25 when this story begins, and he'd always been the golden child, the firstborn son, the one my father saw himself in. Every achievement Marcus made, and there were many, was celebrated like a national holiday. On a roll. Family dinner at his favorite restaurant. New job? My parents posted about it on Facebook for a week straight. Even his failures were treated like unfortunate detours on an otherwise perfect journey. Then there was Lily, 19, beautiful, and blessed with the superpower of being the baby of the family. She could do no wrong because everything she did was either adorable or excusable. Late for curfew? She's young. She's figuring things out. Failed a class? School isn't for everyone. Lily moved through life like someone walking through a world made of soft edges, where consequences were suggestions and love was unconditional. And then there was me, Sarah, 21, the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who didn't need attention because I'd learned not to ask for it. I want to be clear about something. I love my family. I really did. And there were good moments, beautiful moments even. Sunday morning pancakes with my dad, where he'd make me laugh with terrible jokes. Shopping trips with my mom, where for a few hours it felt like we were friends. Movie nights with all of us crowded on the couch, arguing over what to watch. But underneath those moments, there was always this current, this understanding that love in our house was conditional, finite. And I was always coming in third in a race I didn't know I'd entered. The red flags were always there. I just didn't have the language to name them yet. When I made the honor roll in high school, straight A's every semester, my parents would nod and say, "That's good, honey." When Marcus made honor roll, they'd frame the certificate. When I got into a good college with a partial scholarship, my mom said, "Well, it's not a full ride, but it's something." When Marcus got into law school, they threw him a party. I remember being 16 and winning a writing competition. A real one, with a panel of judges and a cash prize. I was so excited to tell them. I waited until dinner, until everyone was together, and I said, "I have some good news." And before I could finish, my dad interrupted to ask Marcus about his internship interview. I never did tell them about that award. I learned to celebrate my victories in private, to make my joy small and quiet so it wouldn't take up too much space, to be proud of myself in whispers. But I told myself it was okay. I told myself that this was just how families worked. That love wasn't always loud, wasn't always fair, but it was still love. Right? Everything changed when I was 19. My parents hit a rough patch financially. My dad's business slowed down, and my mom's hours at work got cut. The stress in our house became thick enough to choke on. There were fights behind closed doors, bills stacked on the kitchen counter, a tension that made every conversation feel like walking through a minefield. I was halfway through my sophomore year of college, finally starting to feel like I was building something of my own. I had friends. I had a major I loved, English and communications. I had this tiny dorm room that was mine, where I could be loud or quiet or whatever I wanted without worrying about taking up too much space. And then my mom called. "Sarah, honey, we need to talk about something." I can still hear the way her voice cracked when she said it. The way she tried to sound casual but couldn't quite hide the desperation underneath. They needed help. Financial help. Just for a little while, she promised. Just until they got back on their feet. Could I maybe take a semester off? Come home, work full-time, help with the bills? It would only be temporary. 6 months, maybe a year at most. Marcus was in law school. He couldn't possibly drop out. His future was too important. Lily was still in high school. She needed stability, needed to focus on her education. But me, I could come back to school anytime, right? I remember sitting on my dorm room floor, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the acceptance letter for a summer writing program I'd been too excited to sleep the night before. A program that could have changed everything for me. And I said yes, because that's what good daughters do. That's what responsible middle children do. We step up. We sacrifice. We put everyone else's dreams before our own and tell ourselves it's noble. I told myself it was temporary. I came home. I deferred my enrollment. I got 2 jobs, one at a coffee shop in the mornings, one doing data entry at night. I worked 60-hour weeks. I gave 70% of every paycheck to my parents. I watched my savings account, the one I'd been building since I was 15, slowly drain to nothing. And I told myself it was temporary. Months passed, then a year, then another year. I was 21 years old, and I couldn't remember the last time I'd done something just for myself. But I held on to hope. I held on to the belief that this sacrifice meant something, that my family saw what I was doing, that they were grateful, that when things got better, they'd remember. They'd appreciate. They'd love me the way I loved them. I had no idea what was coming. I had no idea that in just a few weeks, I'd be standing in a room full of people I'd spent my whole life trying to please, hearing words that would shatter everything I thought I knew about family, about love, about my own worth. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, you need to understand exactly how deep I was in, how completely I'd lost myself trying to be enough. Because the betrayal, it only hurt as much as it did because I'd given them everything. And they still looked at me like I was nothing. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday. It was sitting on the kitchen counter when I came home from my morning shift at the coffee shop, my feet aching, my uniform still smelling like espresso and burnt milk. A cream-colored envelope with gold embossed lettering. Expensive. The kind of stationery that whispers money before you even open it. I picked it up, confused. We weren't the kind of family that did fancy invitations. We were group text people. Last-minute plan people. But there it was, and when I opened it, I understood. You are cordially invited to celebrate the engagement of Marcus Chun and Victoria Hastings. My brother was getting married. I stood there in our tiny kitchen, still holding my car keys, reading those words over and over. Marcus was engaged. To Victoria, his girlfriend of 2 years, the corporate lawyer with the perfect smile and the designer handbags. The woman my parents talked about like she was royalty. And nobody had told me. I found out from an invitation. I heard footsteps on the stairs and looked up to see my mom coming down, already dressed for the day. Her hair perfect, her makeup flawless. She smiled when she saw me holding the invitation. Oh, good, you found it. Isn't it beautiful? Victoria's mother had them custom made. Cost a fortune, but they're gorgeous, right? I stared at her. When did this happen? What, the engagement? Oh, 3 weeks ago. Marcus proposed at that fancy restaurant downtown. You know, the one with the Michelin star? He rented out the whole private dining room. Had roses everywhere, a violinist playing. It was so romantic. Victoria's been posting about it nonstop on Instagram. 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks, and nobody had called me. Nobody had texted. Nobody had thought to share this news with me directly. Person to person. Sister to brother. Why didn't anyone tell me? My voice came out quieter than I intended. My mom was already moving past me, reaching for the coffee pot. Well, honey, you're always so busy with work. We figured you'd find out eventually. Besides, Marcus wanted the invitations to be a surprise. A surprise, not the engagement, just the invitation. I felt something twist in my chest, but I pushed it down. I'd gotten good at that over the years. Pushing things down. making space for other people's joy even when there was no space left inside me. That's great, Mom. I'm happy for him. And I was. I really was. Marcus deserved happiness. This wasn't about him. This was about the pattern. The same pattern that had been playing on repeat my entire life. The engagement party is Saturday, my mom continued, pouring her coffee. Victoria's parents are hosting it at their country club. It's going to be beautiful. The whole family will be there. Aunts, uncles, cousins. Oh, and make sure you dress nice, okay? Victoria's family is, well, they're used to a certain standard. Saturday, for days away. For days to buy a gift I couldn't afford, find an outfit that would meet the mysterious standard of people I'd never met, and pretend to be thrilled about a celebration nobody had bothered to include me in until now. Sure, I said. I'll be there. My mom smiled, patted my shoulder, and walked away. I stood in that kitchen for a long time after she left, still holding that cream-colored invitation, feeling something inside me start to crack. The next 4 days passed in a blur of work and worry. I picked up extra shifts at the coffee shop to afford a decent gift. I settled on a set of expensive wine glasses that took half my paycheck. I borrowed a dress from my coworker because everything in my closet was either work clothes or pajamas. I practiced my smile in the mirror. The one that says, I'm fine, I'm happy, everything is exactly as it should be. Saturday arrived too quickly. The country club was exactly what I expected. Sprawling green lawns, white columns, the kind of place where even the air feels expensive. I parked my beat-up Honda between a BMW and a Mercedes and tried not to feel like I was crashing someone else's life. Inside, the party was already in full swing. A live jazz band played in the corner. Waiters glided through the crowd with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres I couldn't pronounce. Everything was cream and gold and crystal, like the invitation had come to life. I spotted my family immediately. They were at the center of it all, surrounded by Victoria's family, beautiful people in beautiful clothes, laughing beautiful laughs. My mom saw me first. She waved me over, her smile bright but tight. Sarah, finally, come meet Victoria's parents. I made my way through the crowd, clutching my gift bag, very aware of how my borrowed dress didn't quite fit right, how my shoes were scuffed, how I didn't belong in this room full of people who'd never had to choose between groceries and gas. The introductions were a blur. Victoria's mother had the kind of polished charm that felt like a performance. Her father had a handshake that lasted exactly the appropriate amount of time, and not a second longer. They were pleasant, perfectly pleasant, and completely uninterested in knowing anything real about me. Marcus hugged me, and for a moment, he was just my brother again. Thanks for coming, Sarah. Of course, I said. Congratulations. I'm really happy for you. And I meant it. In that moment, I really did. Victoria appeared at his side, radiant in a white cocktail dress that probably cost more than my car. She smiled at me, a smile I'd seen before, the kind that's friendly on the surface but measures you underneath. Sarah, so glad you could make it. Marcus talks about you all the time. Lie, but a polite one. Wouldn't miss it, I said, matching her tone. Playing the game. The evening continued. I made small talk with relatives who barely remember my name. I smiled for photos. I laughed at jokes that weren't funny. I watched my parents glow with pride as they showed off their successful son and his impressive fiancée. And through it all, I felt invisible. Not ignored, that would have been easier. I was acknowledged, included in the physical sense. But nobody asked me how I was doing. Nobody asked about my life, my job, my dreams. When relatives asked what I was up to, my mother would jump in before I could answer. Oh, Sarah's taking some time off from school, helping us out. You know how it is. Taking time off, like it was a gap year, a vacation. Not 2 years of my life dissolved into 60-hour work weeks and empty savings accounts. I excused myself to the bathroom just to breathe. I stood in front of the marble sink in this palace of a bathroom, staring at my reflection. The girl looking back at me looked tired, older than 21. There were shadows under her eyes that concealer couldn't quite hide. Who was I? When had I become this person who existed in the margins of other people's stories? I splashed cold water on my face, fixed my smile, and went back out. The speeches started around 8. Victoria's father went first, talking about how proud he was of his daughter, how Marcus was exactly the kind of man he'd hoped she'd find. My father went next, his voice thick with emotion as he talked about watching Marcus grow up, about how proud he was of the man he'd become. Marcus has always known what he wanted, my dad said, his eyes shining, and he's never been afraid to go after it. That's the kind of determination that builds a good life, a good marriage. Everyone applauded. Marcus beamed. Victoria glowed. And I clapped along, smiling, wondering if my father even remembered that I'd had dreams once too, that I'd known what I wanted, that I'd been afraid, yes, but I'd been willing to try anyway, until I'd been asked to give it all up for the family that was now celebrating someone else's dreams coming true. The party wound down around 10. People started leaving, still laughing, still glowing from champagne and celebration. I helped my mom gather gifts, load them into my dad's car. Useful as always. Helpful as always. We were the last ones there, just our family and Victoria's family, saying final goodbyes in the parking lot. That's when Victoria's mother turned to my parents and said, casually, like she was discussing the weather, "So, have you thought about the wedding budget?" Victoria and James have been planning their dream wedding since she was a little girl. We're thinking somewhere around $80,000 should cover it nicely. $80,000. I watched my parents' faces, watched the panic flash across my mother's eyes before she covered it with a smile. "Of course," my mom said. "We'll figure it out." In that moment, I knew. I knew exactly what was coming. I knew that in a few days or weeks, there would be another phone call, another ask, another sacrifice that was only temporary, only until things got better, only fair because family helps family. And I knew with a certainty that made my stomach drop that I was going to say yes again, because I didn't know how to say no, because I'd built my entire identity around being the one who helped, who sacrificed, who made things work, because I still believed, somewhere deep down, that if I just gave enough, they'd finally see my worth. I didn't know yet that some people will never see you, no matter how much of yourself you give away. But I was about to learn. We got home close to midnight. I was exhausted, the kind of tired that lives in your bones that no amount of sleep can fix. I went straight to my room, but before I could close the door, I heard my parents talking in the kitchen. Their voices were low but urgent. I shouldn't have listened, but I did. $80,000, Michael. $80,000 for a wedding. How are we supposed to come up with that? We'll figure it out. Marcus deserves this. He's worked hard his whole life. I know, but we'll figure it out. A pause. Then my mother's voice, quieter now. We could ask Sarah to pitch in. She's been saving for school, but, family comes first, right? And it's her brother's wedding. She'd want to help. My blood went cold. My savings, the little bit I'd managed to scrape together over the past few months, hidden away in an account they didn't know about. Money I'd been holding onto like a lifeline, like proof that I hadn't completely lost myself. They wanted that too. I stood in the hallway, frozen, listening to my parents plan how to ask me to give away the last piece of myself I had left. And something inside me began to shift. Not break, not yet, but shift, like a foundation developing its first crack. I went to bed that night staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in my life, I let myself think a thought I'd never allowed before. What if I said no? The conversation came 3 days later. I was in the kitchen making dinner. I'd taken over most of the cooking since I'd moved back home. Just one more thing I'd silently added to my list of responsibilities. My mom came in and sat at the table, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea, her expression carefully casual. "Sarah, honey, we need to talk about something." I knew what was coming. I'd known since the night of the engagement party, but I kept stirring the pasta, kept my face neutral. "What's up?" "It's about the wedding. Marcus and Victoria's wedding." I waited. "The thing is, it's going to be expensive. More expensive than we initially thought. And your father and I have been talking, and we were wondering if maybe you could contribute something. Whatever you've got saved, just to help out. It would mean so much to Marcus. And to us." I stopped stirring, set down the spoon. turned to face her. You want me to give you my savings? It's not like that, honey. It's helping with your brother's wedding. It's an investment in his future. In family. I've been saving that money to go back to school. I know, and you will. Just after the wedding. After things settle down. You're young, Sarah. You have time. But your brother, this is his moment. And family helps family. There it was again. That phrase. Family helps family. The phrase that had been used to justify every sacrifice I'd made, every dream I'd deferred, every piece of myself I'd given away. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and I saw it clearly for the first time. She wasn't asking. She was expecting. She'd already decided what my answer would be because I'd never said no before. How much do you need? I heard myself ask. Whatever you have. Every bit helps. Not a number. Not a limit. Everything. I have about 5,000 saved, I said quietly. I was going to use it to re-enroll next semester. To get back to school and finish my degree. And that would be perfect, honey. That would help so much. You're such a good sister. Such a good daughter. Good. That word. I'd been chasing that word my entire life. I opened my mouth to say yes. The word was right there, trained into me by years of conditioning. Years of learning that my role in this family was to give and give and give until there was nothing left. But then I thought about standing in that country club bathroom, staring at the exhausted stranger in the mirror. I thought about the writing competition I'd won at 16 that nobody remembered. I thought about the scholarship I'd earned that was met with lukewarm acknowledgement. I thought about 2 years of my life, dissolved into coffee shop shifts and data entry and making myself smaller and smaller until I barely existed. And I thought about my savings account. $5,000. Not much in the grand scheme of things. But it was mine. The only thing I had that was mine. I need to think about it, I said. My mother's face changed. Just slightly. A tightening around her eyes. Think about it? Sarah, it's your brother's wedding. I know. I need to think about it. What's there to think about? Either you care about this family or you don't. There it was. The ultimatum hiding underneath every request. Give us what we want or you don't really love us. That's not fair, Mom. What's not fair is your brother getting married and his own sister not wanting to help make his day special. I didn't say I wouldn't help. I said I need to think about it. You're being selfish. The word hit me like a slap. Selfish. Me. The girl who'd given up everything. The girl who'd put her entire life on hold. The girl who'd worked herself to exhaustion for 2 years to keep this family afloat. Selfish. I've been home for 2 years, I said, my voice shaking. 2 years, Mom. I've given you 70% of every paycheck I've earned. I've worked 60-hour weeks. I've put my life, my education, my entire future on hold. And you're calling me selfish because I want to think about giving you the last bit of savings I have. We didn't force you to do any of that. You offered. You asked. And you said yes. Nobody held a gun to your head. Sarah. She was right. Nobody had forced me. I'd said yes every time. And somehow that made it worse. I need some air, I said, and walked out before she could respond. I drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove. Windows down, radio off, trying to breathe through the tightness in my chest. I ended up at the park near our house, the one I used to go to as a kid. It was empty this late, just me and the swings and the streetlights casting long shadows across the playground. I sat on a swing, not swinging, just sitting, staring at nothing. My phone buzzed. A text from my dad. Your mother is upset. This wedding is important to our family. I hope you'll do the right thing. Not, are you okay? Not, let's talk about this. Just a reminder of what was expected, what doing the right thing meant. I thought about texting back, explaining, defending myself. But what was there to say? I'd been explaining and defending my entire life, and it never changed anything. Another text, this time from Marcus. Hey, Mom told me you're thinking about helping with the wedding. That's really cool of you. Thanks, sis. Not a question, an assumption. Thank you for something I hadn't agreed to yet. I sat there on that swing as the sun set, watching the sky turn from blue to pink to purple to black, and I felt something inside me that had been cracking finally split wide open. I'd spent 21 years of my life trying to earn love from people who treated it like something I had to deserve. 21 years of shrinking myself, silencing myself, sacrificing myself. And what had it gotten me? A borrowed dress at my brother's engagement party. A conversation where my own mother called me selfish for hesitating to give away my last hope of building a future. A family that saw me as a resource, not a person. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Stared at that number. $5,312. Every cent earned through exhaustion and sacrifice. My ticket back to school. My ticket back to myself. Or my brother's wedding gift. Another piece of me, dissolved into someone else's dream. I sat there for a long time, staring at that number. And then I did something I'd never done before. I said no, not out loud, not to anyone, but to myself. In the quiet of my own mind, I drew a line. This was mine, and I was keeping it. The decision felt terrifying and liberating at the same time, like jumping off a cliff and realizing halfway down that you might know how to fly. I went home around 10. The house was dark except for the light in the living room. I could hear the TV playing. Normal sounds, like we hadn't just had a conversation that shifted everything. I went straight to my room, closed the door, and sat on my bed. I knew what was coming. I knew that saying no, really saying no, standing firm, was going to change things, was going to create conflict I'd spent my whole life avoiding. But for the first time, I felt ready. Or at least I thought I did. I had no idea what was actually coming. I had no idea that in 2 weeks, I'd be standing in a room full of family, hearing words that would burn away everything I thought I knew about love, about loyalty, about my place in this family. But that night, sitting on my bed in the dark, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Small, fragile, barely there, but real. I was going to keep my savings. I was going to go back to school. I was going to start choosing myself. I fell asleep believing that saying no would be the hardest part. I had no idea that the hardest part was still coming. And it would arrive on a Sunday afternoon, in the middle of a family dinner, in the form of 6 words that would destroy me and rebuild me all at once. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. First, you need to know about the 2 weeks between my decision and my destruction, because those 2 weeks taught me something important. Sometimes, the people who claim to love you will try to break you for choosing yourself. And sometimes you have to let them try, because the only other option is breaking yourself instead. The silence started the next morning. Not the peaceful kind, the weaponized kind, the kind that fills every room you walk into, that follows you down hallways, that sits heavy at the breakfast table like an uninvited guest. My mother didn't speak to me for 3 days. Not about the money, not about anything. She'd move around me like I was furniture, useful when needed, invisible otherwise. My father followed her lead, the way he always did. Not angry, not cold, just absent, present in body, gone in every way that mattered. I'd grown up in this house. I knew how punishment worked here. It wasn't yelling or confrontation. It was erasure. You became a ghost until you apologized for whatever sin you'd committed. And the sin, in this case, was wanting to keep something for myself. On the 4th day, I tried to bridge the gap. Mom, can we talk about this? She was loading the dishwasher, her movements precise and deliberate. She didn't look up. Talk about what, Sarah? About the wedding. About what I said. You made yourself clear. You don't want to help your brother. There's nothing to talk about. That's not. I didn't say I wouldn't help. I just need to keep some of my savings for school. Your brother is getting married. That happens once in a lifetime if he's lucky. School will always be there. School has already been waiting for 2 years. Finally, she looked at me, and the disappointment in her eyes was so familiar it almost felt like home. I don't know when you became so selfish, Sarah. I really don't. Selfish. There was that word again. The one designed to cut, to make me question everything I knew about myself. I've given this family everything for 2 years, I said quietly. How is wanting to finish my degree selfish? Because your brother needs you now. Family comes first. I thought we raised you to understand that. You did. That's why I came home in the first place. That's why I've been working myself to exhaustion. But I can't give everything, Mom. I have to keep something for myself. She turned back to the dishwasher, her jaw tight. Then I guess you've made your choice. The conversation was over. Just like that. The silent treatment extended to the rest of the family. Marcus called that weekend. Not to check on me, not to ask how I was doing. To convince me. Hey, Sarah. So, Mom told me about the wedding fund situation. I closed my eyes, phone pressed to my ear. Marcus, Look, I get it. Money's tight for everyone. But this is my wedding, you know? And Victoria's family is putting in so much. Her parents are covering most of it, but they expect us to contribute too. It would be really embarrassing if we couldn't pull our weight. Embarrassing. For him. Not financially devastating for me. Not dream-ending. Just embarrassing. I'm not saying I won't help, I said carefully. I'm just saying I can't give everything I have saved. How much do you have? The question felt invasive, but I answered anyway. A little over 5,000. That's perfect. That would cover the flowers and part of the catering. Sarah, that would be huge. That's also my tuition for next semester. A pause. Then, you can take out student loans, can't you? Like everyone else does. Like everyone else. Everyone else who hadn't already sacrificed 2 years of their education to keep this family afloat. I've been home for 2 years, Marcus. Working 2 jobs. Giving most of my money to Mom and Dad. I think I've contributed enough to this family. His tone shifted. Cooled. Wow. Okay. I didn't realize you were keeping score. I'm not keeping score. I'm just trying to keep enough to build a future. By refusing to help with my wedding. By refusing to give you literally every cent I have saved. You know what? Forget it. I don't want your money if you're going to be like this about it. I'll figure it out myself. Marcus. He hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. This was my brother. The brother I'd looked up to my entire life. The brother whose success I'd genuinely celebrated, whose happiness I'd genuinely wanted. And he just hung up on me for trying to keep my own savings. Lily was next. She cornered me in the hallway after dinner one night, her eyes wide and innocent the way they'd always been. Sarah, can I talk to you? Sure. It's about Marcus's wedding. Of course it was. Mom and Dad are really stressed about the money, she said, her voice soft, almost pleading. And I heard you have some savings that could help. Why won't you give it to them? Because I need it for school, Lily. But you can go back to school anytime. Marcus only gets married once. The party line. Word for word. I've already put school off for 2 years. I'm 21 years old, and I'm no closer to my degree than I was when I left. That was your choice, though. Nobody forced you. There it was again. That phrase. Nobody forced you. Technically true. Emotionally devastating. You're right, I said quietly. Nobody forced me. I made a choice to help this family when they needed it. And now I'm making a choice to help myself. Lily's face fell. So you're choosing yourself over family? Why does it have to be a choice? Why can't I do both? Because family means sacrifice, Sarah. It means putting other people first sometimes. I've been putting other people first for 2 years. And now when Marcus needs you, you're backing out. I looked at my little sister, 19 years old, never worked a full-time job in her life, never had to choose between her dreams and someone else's needs, and I felt a surge of something I didn't want to name. It wasn't quite anger. It wasn't quite resentment. It was more like exhaustion. Soul-deep exhaustion from being the only one in this family who was ever asked to sacrifice. I'm going to bed, I said, and walked away before she could respond. The 2 weeks passed like that. Silent meals, tense conversations, a house that felt more like a battleground than a home. I picked up extra shifts at work, partly for the money, partly to stay away from the suffocating atmosphere at home. My coworkers noticed something was off. I was quieter than usual, less present, but I brushed off their concerns with practiced ease. Just family stuff, I'd say with a smile. It'll blow over. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe this was temporary, that once the wedding happened and the dust settled, things would go back to normal. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. A line had been crossed. I'd said no, and in doing so, I'd violated the unspoken contract that had governed my entire life. That my needs came last, that my dreams were negotiable, that my worth was measured by what I could give rather than who I was. I'd broken the rules, and my family was making sure I knew it. The breaking point came on a Sunday. We were having a family dinner, something my mother insisted on despite the tension. "We're still a family," she said, as if saying it would make it true. It was supposed to be just us, but when I came downstairs, I found the dining room full. My Aunt Carol and Uncle Jim, my cousins, my grandmother. At least a dozen people crowded around our table, plates loaded with my mother's famous pot roast. I stopped in the doorway, confused. I didn't know we were having people over. "It was last minute," my mom said, not looking at me. "Marcus wanted the family together to talk about wedding plans." Of course, everything was about the wedding now. I took the only empty seat, squeezed between my cousin Rachel and my grandmother. The conversation flowed around me. Seating arrangements, color schemes, venue details. I smiled and nodded, and tried to ignore the knot in my stomach. Marcus was at the head of the table, Victoria beside him, both of them glowing with the kind of happiness that comes from having everything fall perfectly into place. "So," Victoria's voice rang out, clear and bright, "we finalized the budget. Between our parents and some creative planning, we're going to make this work. It's going to be the wedding of our dreams." Everyone applauded. My mother beamed. "It takes a village," my Aunt Carol said, smiling. "That's what family is for." "Absolutely," my mother agreed. Then, almost casually, she added, "Although some people value their own plans more than family celebrations." The table went quiet. I felt every eye turn toward me. "Mom," I started. "What?" She looked at me, all innocence. "I'm just saying, it's interesting how some people in this family are willing to sacrifice for each other, and some people need to be convinced." My face burned. "That's not fair. Isn't it? You have money saved. Your brother needs help. Seems pretty straightforward to me. I've been helping this family for 2 years. And we appreciate that, honey. But when it really matters, when your brother needs you, you choose yourself instead." "I'm not choosing myself instead. I'm trying to choose myself also." "That's very modern of you," my Aunt Carol chimed in, her voice dripping with judgment. "In my day, family came first." "Family does come first," I said, my voice shaking. "I've put family first for 2 years. I just want to keep enough to go back to school." "College will always be there," my grandmother said, patting my hand. "But your brother's wedding is once in a lifetime." I pulled my hand away. "So is my education." "Don't be dramatic," my mother said. "It's 1 semester. You can go back after the wedding. You said that 2 years ago. You said it was temporary." The words came out louder than I intended. The room fell silent. My father spoke for the first time all evening. His voice was calm, measured, disappointed. "Sarah, you're making a scene." "I'm making a scene? I'm just trying to explain." "You're being selfish," my mother interrupted. "And honestly, we're all tired of it." "Selfish?" My voice cracked. "I've given this family everything. You've given exactly what was asked of you. That's not special. That's just being part of a family. Then what about what I'm asking for? What about what I need?" "What you need," my mother said slowly, her words precise and cutting, "is to grow up and realize the world doesn't revolve around you." Something inside me snapped. "You know what?" I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "You're right. The world doesn't revolve around me. But it doesn't revolve around Marcus either. Or this wedding. Or any of you." "Sarah, sit down," my father said. "No, I'm done. I'm done apologizing for wanting something for myself. I'm done being made to feel guilty for having boundaries. I'm done shrinking myself so everyone else can feel bigger." "If that's how you feel," my mother said, her voice ice cold, "maybe you should consider whether you even want to be part of this family." The room went deadly silent. I stared at her. "What did you just say?" "You heard me. If being part of this family is such a burden to you, if helping your brother is too much to ask, then maybe you'd be happier somewhere else." My Aunt Carol gasped. Someone else whispered something I couldn't hear. But I only heard my mother's words, echoing in my head. "Maybe you'd be happier somewhere else. You want me to leave?" My voice came out barely above a whisper. "I want you to decide what matters to you. Because right now, it seems like this family doesn't." I looked around the table. At my father, who wouldn't meet my eyes. At Marcus, who looked uncomfortable but said nothing. At Lily, who was staring at her plate. At my relatives, all watching like this was dinner theater. No one defended me. No one said that's too far. No one said let's all calm down. They just watched. And in that moment I saw it. I saw exactly where I stood in this family. What I was to them. Not a daughter. Not a sister. A resource. Something to be used when convenient, discarded when difficult. You know what the saddest part is? I said, my voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill. I would have given you some of the money. Not all of it, but some. I just wanted you to understand why I needed to keep the rest. I just wanted you to see me as a person with needs and dreams, not just a bank account or a source of labor. Everything is always so dramatic with you, my mother said. And then she said the words, the ones that would replay in my head for months, the ones that would break me and eventually remake me. Honestly, Sarah, sometimes I think you cause more problems than you solve. Sometimes we wonder if things would have been easier if you were never born. The room froze. Those words hung in the air like poison. If you were never born. I heard gasps. Someone said, oh my God. Someone else said, that's going too far. But it was too late. The words were out. And we both knew she'd meant them. I looked at my mother. Really looked at her. And I saw no regret in her eyes. No horror at what she'd just said. Just anger. Frustration. Resentment. She'd been holding these words for years, maybe my entire life. And now they were finally free. Something inside me went very, very quiet. Not broken. Not shattered. Just quiet. Like a door closing. Like a chapter ending. Like a rope being cut. I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It wasn't a bitter smile. It was something else entirely. Something peaceful and final. Okay, I said softly. Thank you for finally being honest. And I walked out. Not dramatically. Not slamming doors or shouting. I just walked out of that dining room, up the stairs to my bedroom, and I started packing. I heard footsteps behind me. My father's voice. Sarah, your mother didn't mean. Yes, she did. She's just stressed about the wedding. I don't care. I kept packing. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, the few possessions that actually mattered to me. Where will you go? I'll figure it out. Sarah, please. Don't do this. I stopped packing and turned to face him. My father. The man who'd been silent through every slight, every dismissal, every moment I'd needed someone to stand up for me. Do you know what's funny, Dad? In 21 years, you've never once defended me. Not once. You just stand there and let Mom say whatever she wants. You let everyone treat me like I'm replaceable. Like I don't matter. And now you're asking me not to leave. I do defend you. When? When have you ever told Mom she was wrong? When have you ever told Marcus he was being unfair? When have you ever made me feel like I was more than just the responsible one, the helpful one, the one who exists to make everyone else's life easier? He had no answer. I went back to packing. 20 minutes later, everything I cared about fit into 2 suitcases and a backpack. 21 years of life condensed into luggage. I walked down the stairs one last time. The dinner party had dispersed. I could hear murmured conversations in other rooms, but I didn't care. I walked straight to the front door. My mother was waiting there. You're really going to do this? Walk away from your family over a fight? I looked at her, and I smiled again. That same quiet, peaceful smile. You wished I was never born, I said calmly. I'm just granting your wish. And I walked out the door, into my car, down the driveway, away from the house I'd grown up in, the family I'd sacrificed everything for, the people who just made it crystal clear exactly how little I meant to them. I drove to my friend Melissa's apartment. She'd offered me her couch months ago if I ever needed it. I'd laughed it off then. I wasn't laughing now. I called her from the parking lot. Mel, that offer for your couch, is it still open? Always. What happened? I'll tell you when I get inside. Can you buzz me up? Already done. I grabbed my suitcases and walked into my new life. I didn't cry that night. I didn't rage or break down. I just sat on Melissa's couch, told her the whole story, and felt that quiet inside me grow stronger. They're going to call, Melissa said. They're going to apologize and ask you to come back. Maybe. Are you going to? I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I said finally. I don't think I am. And I meant it. For the first time in my life, I'd chosen myself. And it felt terrifying and liberating and absolutely necessary. I didn't know what came next. I didn't know how I was going to rebuild my life, go back to school, figure out who I was without the weight of my family's expectations crushing me. But I knew one thing for certain. I was never going back to being that girl. The one who made herself small. The one who gave everything away. The one who believed love had to be earned through sacrifice. That girl was gone. And in her place was someone new. Someone I was just beginning to meet. Someone who knew her worth. Someone who'd finally learned to say no. Someone who'd smiled in the face of the worst thing her mother could say. Because she finally understood that those words said everything about them and nothing about her. The revenge I'd get, the justice I'd find, wasn't going to come from hurting them back. It was going to come from building a life so beautiful, so successful, so genuinely happy that their cruelty would become irrelevant. But that comes later. Right now, I just sat on that couch in that tiny apartment and I breathed. For the first time in 2 years, I could breathe. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever sacrificed your dreams for people who never appreciated it, if you're learning to choose yourself, please hit that subscribe button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you are not selfish for having boundaries. You are not ungrateful for wanting more. You are not the problem for refusing to be treated like you don't matter. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next chapter, where everything changes, where the real transformation begins. Until then, choose yourself. Always.